I kicked my stepmom out when she tried to take over my life and ruin my relationship. And now, my dad and I may never be the same. My story starts with my dad, George, 56 male, divorcing my mom, Judith, 54 female, all because of a younger woman. To be specific, he fell for his secretary, Claire, 31. 4 years ago, Dad finally became director of the company he'd worked at for over 26 years. It was a big deal, and all of us were proud. He started as an intern and made it to the top. My mom, meanwhile, owns a small but thriving advertising agency. Even though it's not as big time as Dad's old company, she's her own boss. So yeah, I was raised with money and drive on both sides. About me, I'm Ethan, 27M, and I work for myself as a graphic designer. I started freelancing in my late teens, thanks to Mom, because she was way ahead of the curve on all things digital. High school still wasn't done before I was making more than most kids my age. My parents weren't perfect together. In fact, for years, I rarely saw them together, since both were so wrapped up in their own careers. Growing up, though, they were like a dream team, always clicked on work, ambition, and just having fun as a family. I had the best childhood. It was only around college that things started to shift. They drifted apart quickly, but I never once heard them argue or badmouth each other, so I figured it was just a grown-up phase. But as it turns out, there was more to it. Dad lost interest in Mom once she reached menopause. He said her hormones made life unbearable for him. I know, what a jerk thing to say. That's when he found comfort with Claire, his secretary. The affair started before his promotion. He only got serious once he actually became director, and the rumors died down. When my mom found out, she didn't create any drama. In fact, she just wished him luck and said goodbye. That's one of the things I admire most about her. She's composed and confident. Before letting him go, she made sure to get what she deserved, the house and a large part of Dad's savings as alimony. Not because she's greedy, but because she helped build that wealth, and she'd be damned if someone else would claim it. So after the divorce, Dad was left with very little besides his car and some savings, which he immediately started dumping on his new love. The divorce went peacefully. Dad just gave in to everything Mom asked for, probably because he knew messing with her would backfire. Fortunately, I'd moved off to my own place, a huge 2-bedroom apartment I started renting in college using my freelance income. Never pick sides, because I love both my parents, even if I've always been closer to Mom. I still got along well with Dad. He always respected her success too. Dad and Claire, let's just call her that from now on, started sharing a rented place after Mom forced him out of the old house. But there was a catch. His company had a strict no-dating coworkers rule. Dad hoped to keep the relationship quiet, but Claire couldn't help bragging to her friends at work, which backfired when they ratted her out. Both she and Dad were fired. Yes, he lost his director job for her. A few months ago, I bought my own, and pretty amazing, if I say so myself, 3-bedroom penthouse. So last week, Dad showed up at my door with a request. Could I let him and Claire stay at my place? They were planning to get married the next month, had nowhere to go, and both were unemployed, living off Dad's dwindling savings. I have to admit, the idea made me uneasy. I'd worked hard for my privacy. Dad assured me they wouldn't get in my way, and I discussed it with Mom. True to form, she told me it was my decision and she wasn't going to butt in. Still, I really wanted to help out, but was wary of Claire, especially since I barely knew her. Appreciate any advice if you've been through something similar. Update 1. Hey, thank you for the patience. Here's what happened next. After a lot of thinking, I agreed to let my dad and Claire move in, but told him clearly, only after they got married. I naively assumed it would be a small, low-key wedding, since it was the second for both. Wrong. They threw a ridiculous, expensive bash, followed by a tropical honeymoon. No clue how they paid for any of that, but figured it wasn't my business. So, for the last few months, they've been living at my place. Oh, and I left out that Claire is a single mom to Bella, 6'5", who's basically a tiny, unleashed version of her mother. That kid is always running all over the place, breaking things, causing chaos. She's not charming or sweet. Think spoiled, loud, and bratty. Dad still hasn't gotten his business started, and he's constantly trying to nail down new investors. Claire, meanwhile, never seems to be job hunting at all. Her days are spent lounging, gossiping with friends, or inviting random acquaintances over. It's just weird, honestly. Growing up, my mom was never sitting around unless she was sick. She worked even on weekends. Claire acts like Dad's still rich and spends accordingly. Either Dad lied to her about how much money he really has, or he was lying to me. I'm leaning toward the latter. She seriously needs to be told the truth and get a job. But as for my own life, I was happy for a while since I started seeing someone. Julia, 24F. She's a vlogger, just starting out, so I won't drop her full details. First, we only worked together virtually. I did some editing for her videos, but I quickly realized I was falling for her. I finally asked her out under the excuse of a work meetup, and she was even better in person. We kept dating, and things were going well. Julia lives with her teenage sister and a veritable zoo of pets. Even if my apartment was empty, Julia wouldn't have moved in. She looks after her sister in the house they inherited from their grandfather. I kept hoping Dad's business would take off quickly so he and Claire could move out. They didn't bother me at first, but after a little while, Claire started making judgy comments about my lifestyle. Nothing major, yet, just little things, and each time I made it clear I wasn't interested. If she pushed me, I'd push back harder. Update 2. So, it's exactly a year since my last update, and boy, things have gotten more intense. First off, I'm engaged. Yup, got down on one knee and proposed to Julia last week. I know it's early, but when you know, you know. Living situation, however, is a nightmare. Claire is a piece of work, and I can't blame her for everything since Dad's been feeding her delusions about their finances. The first few months, Claire and her endless visitors weren't really a problem, but then she started making snide comments that I keep my room messy. I need to pick up my laundry, that sort of thing. My mom never even said anything like that to me. I'm my own man, and this is my place. At first, I let her comments slide, but when she kept nagging, I finally had a talk with Dad, telling him to get Claire to back off. He apologized and asked her to stop bothering me. She clearly resented me for telling on her, but stayed quiet. Fast forward a while, Dad flew to San Francisco to meet investors. With him gone, Claire seemed to think she'd become queen of the house. She started ordering me to do chores. Do the dishes, do the laundry, mow the lawn. Like, excuse me? I'd just do my own dishes and laundry as I always had and ignored the rest. My apathy drove her nuts. She even started screaming that I was a lazy bum living off my dad's money, which is hilarious because it's the exact opposite. I work from home because I'm self-employed. But she seems convinced I'm unemployed and mooching. I wanted to set her straight about owning the house, but I wasn't sure what Dad had told her. Didn't want to drop a truth bomb that could mess up their already tense relationship, so I just avoided her as much as possible and waited for Dad to return. Bella, her kid, got even more destructive, damaging my stuff and never being disciplined. I basically stopped hanging out in my own living room to avoid Claire, but she started banging on my door demanding chores get done. In my own home, when Dad came back, I finally lost it. I told him straight that something had to change. I couldn't keep sharing a roof with her unless she toned it way down or left. Dad apologized, claiming her hormones were acting up because Claire was 3 months pregnant. All I could think was, wow, Dad ditched my mom for hormonal problems. Now he's in for round 2. Still, Dad begged for more time to get his business going and find their own place. I even told him that I needed privacy soon for myself and Julia, since I was planning to settle down with her. Dad promised to be out within 6 months. I asked if he had told Claire the house belonged to me, since she acted like she owned everything. He deflected and changed the subject. I doubt Claire has any idea she's not the landlord. Whatever, I've been sleeping at Julia's more and more, so that's some relief at least. Update 3. Some people never learn, and that's Claire in a nutshell. I mentioned last update that Julia and I are engaged and planning a wedding, but Claire, for no reason, seems intent on wrecking everything. A month after our engagement, I got hit with a brutal viral fever. Julia came to take care of me for a few days. She knew the basics of my family drama, but that's it. I'm not into gossip, and the details of Claire's illusions had never come up. Claire used Julia's visit as a weapon, doing her best to turn Julia against me. She told Julia I was lazy, unemployed, and a bum. Julia knows what I do and how successful I am, so she defended me. Claire doubled down, saying it wasn't about money, but that I never lifted a finger around the house, and that she did everything for me. She said it was proof that I grew up with a patriarchal attitude, since my dad never helps, and now, even pregnant, she does all the housework herself. Julia is not in it for my money, but she does care about shared work and fairness, and Claire's comments really got to her. Then Claire went nuclear. She told Julia that I have a cheater's bloodline, that I'd probably cheat on her, like Dad cheated on my mom. She even lied and said she had seen me bring other women home and hook up with them. Julia, who knows my friends and coworkers, asked for details, but Claire just kept making things up. I was seriously too sick to catch the change in Julia's mood. But it was obvious once I was better. Julia left the next day. A week later, when I went to visit her, she was quieter and a little distant, saying maybe we were moving too quickly. I knew right then Claire was involved because Julia had been so sure and happy before. At first, Julia wouldn't admit it, but when I pressed, she told me what Claire said. I realized any more explaining or arguing would just make things worse, so I said I'd give Julia space, but one thing was clear. Claire needed to go. As soon as I got home, I confronted Claire. She just smirked and said she was telling the truth. That was it. I started hauling her stuff into the living room. She screamed and cursed, threatened to call the police and my dad, and claimed it was her house. I laughed and finally broke the news. The house was mine, and Dad had begged me to let them stay. She freaked and tried to physically force me out. I told her to never touch me again. Dad arrived just as things were escalating. He tried to calm things down, but I was done. I told him bringing Claire into the family was the worst decision he ever made. Claire demanded Dad throw me out, but he finally admitted to her that I own the house. Claire started lashing out at Dad, calling him a cheater and more. Dad pleaded with me to please give them one last chance, but I refused point blank. Claire had tried to break up my engagement, and she wasn't going to wreck my life anymore. Dad eventually gave up, packed their things, and left, all while Claire kept cursing at me, my dad, and even my mom. The biggest regret is that my relationship with my dad may be permanently damaged. Yet, after all the trouble Claire caused, I can't say I feel too sorry for him. He brought this on himself. I went to my mom to fill her in, and she just laughed like it was the best ending to a trashy soap opera. She even invited Julia to dinner to clear the air about the patriarchy stuff and set the record straight about Dad always being a respectful and supportive partner, even after the separation. Mom's advice was to let Julia have space and decide for herself. She also joked that Claire would eventually dump Dad after she realized he was broke, calling her a serial chaser. I honestly don't even worry about Dad anymore. He made his own choices. This story ends right here. This story reflects how unresolved issues and lack of boundaries can tear families apart, and how enabling toxic people can ultimately blow up in your own face. Sometimes, standing up for yourself, no matter how messy, is the only real option. What do you think? Would you have kicked Claire out or just kept your head down until they moved out? What would you do in my shoes? Let me know in the comments.